Okay, so here we are out on the range today. Don't be offended by the sounds of gunfire in the background. Dude, I was trying to channel Paul Harrell a little bit there. Another Pacific Northwester that, one of the 3 or 4 people on the whole inner tube that I enjoy. Paul, I gotta tell you, dude, if you gotta make that caveat that to your viewers, don't be offended by the sound of handguns in the background. That's the sound of freedom, man. You tell your people if they're offended by the sound of gunfire or bothered by the sound of gun, they're on the wrong freaking channel, alright? So, I came down here today because I've got to do a bunch of painting and I'm lettering some of these firearms. My lettering apparatus, I don't think I've ever shown this before. It's an electro etching thing. I don't have access to a good CNC. And the thunder's rumbling from outside. I had to shut the doors and everything because it's getting pretty righteous out there at this point. It's there's something. Ring, 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 ring. Somebody's ringing freehand on the 350-yard steel. It's a 10-inch plate, so it's not too impressive. But anyway, I felt this ramp building because it's kind of a weird. The things that trigger my rants are odd and oftentimes varied. In this case, I came down. I'm painting, so I put on my painting clothes, and it's Carhartt. I bought a few pairs of these just before Carhartt quit making them and before Carhartt caved into the liberals and turned into a bunch of bleeding heart freaks. I live in the state of Washington. We've got a governor out here named Jay Inslee who makes Gavin Newsom look like an angel. And Carhartt's down here in Portland, just down the road, is not only enforcing mask mandates and vaccine mandates and stopping you when you go in the door, and we're 2.5 years into this trumped up mess that we've got going of the Wuhan flu. And the rant that I have building is that people, we have got to think our way out of this mess. That's what started this whole channel. I've grown up in a time when people that I knew subscribed to Popular Mechanics and Popular Science and National Geographic, and we believed that crap. We were told that by the year 2000 we were going to be flying to school and flying to work and flying cars. Obviously those of us who could think realized that that's retarded. That is completely, absolutely stupid. Anybody who's ever been up in an airplane realizes the turning radius of those pigs, and anyone that's ever driven on a road, bumper to bumper, wheel to wheel, 9 lanes of traffic, realizes that we will never, ever fly to work. That's just dumb. I drive to work every day past 1,000 cars per mile, and I'm telling you, if that was 1,000 airplanes, anyway, think. I grew up in a world where I believed in pygmies. The term lemmings is ubiquitous in our culture because I can't even put a name on them, some horrible people started this, well, and it originated with National Geographic, just to use them for an example. They have perpetuated myths beyond belief. Lemmings, these little critters that are so driven and so make your point here, so dedicated to their fearless leader that they go bail off a cliff and drown in the ocean. Mass extinctions, voluntary mass extinctions. There's so much wrong with this, and from the day it started, it's been a farce, it's been a fake, it's been absolutely nothing. I'm ranting today because a bunch of things are just, these I really love. I'd like to go buy 5, 10 more of these. But it turns out the company that did make them, luckily they quit making them about the time they turned tail on all of us. They make clothes for the working man. They make clothes for the populace the segment of the population that supports their stupid ass save the whale agendas. And knowingly and right in our face, they flow. So I quit buying Carhartts. I hate to be standing here in a pair of Carhartts right now because I feel that we have to take an ethical stand against things like, you know, HS Precision and Lon Horiuchi, or the fact that Carhartts gives to the Sierra Club, or worse than the Sierra Club, they're anti-everything that I stand for. So I don't normally buy them. But the thing that started this rant is I wanted to do a bunch of rust bluing. Rust bluing is a wonderful process. I learned to do it back in the day, and the process to this day says dissolve horseshoe nails. Well, I don't dissolve horseshoe nails, but all you need is some nitric acid and some hydrochloric, which is commonly available as muriatic, and some mild steel that you degrease and chuck in until it quits bubbling, and then you take this, and rust bluing is a beautiful thing. When I want to build or put together or deal with this chrome moly action, it's got a decent bluing job on it, but I'd like to strip it and rust blue it so that it matches. Neither here nor there. I want to do some rust bluing. But thanks to a wacko from what a lot of people consider to be the conservative side, our friend Timothy McVeigh, nobody's friend, obviously. I don't even mean that facetiously. I should never have said that. Nitric acid is now a controlled substance. You used to be able to go down and buy it at the drugstore. We used to be able to make, you know, common and in the rest of the world you can still buy it. But we, in our infinite reactive wisdom, passed laws that say nitrogen fertilizers you can't buy anhydrous nitrous, you can't buy. Stupid, stupid, stupid. So that's where this rant is basically coming from, is that as our people talk about our freedoms falling, and to a certain point it's our freedoms, but I gotta get this thing going on a charger here because I was using my eyeballs to do this lettering and I'm running out. So let me digress while I'm talking here about pygmies and lemmings and flying cars. It's one thing now, understand, again, the thinking is I read a lot. And now when I'm out on equipment working, I listen to books quite a bit. And I've been an SF fan for many, many, many years. SF is the correct term for science fiction. Science fiction is written by people who understand science. So somebody just introduced me to a new author and they said, oh, you got to check this guy out. Well, 3 pages into the book, he flies into a place somewhere and they get out off the airplane and they're picked up by a hover car to be brought to their motel on this planet. People, we have got to notice things like that and understand. There's another one. You're never, ever, hover cars are stupid. Hover cars are for feebletons. Hover cars are so non-maneuverable that you need to have them out in the middle of a field or out on a lake to even drive the stupid things. Hover cars are ridiculous in that they're set up for only one loading. You know, you got to set your props and your blades and your lift and your clearances for flat ground for 250 pounds or 400 pounds or 800 pounds. Any SF book that starts with repulsive motors or hover cars or so any of these fallacies, any book, any story, anything that talks about, builds a whole big subject matter around the fact that so-and-so is bathing and the other person brings them breakfast in bed and sets the toaster on the edge, and we all know what's going to happen now when that toaster falls in the tub. The bodies are going to fry right there in place. I mean, their eyeballs are going to pop out and the steam's going to rise. And it goes back to, there's so much that just gets force-fed, not force-fed, it just gets laid out in front of us and we accept it. It took me 20 years to buy a copy of Jurassic Park because I watched the opening one. I was blown away by the state-of-the-art special effects back then. There's dragons and, well, dinosaurs, and they make them into dragons. Big grass-eating, lumbering cow dinosaurs, and they turn, but anyway. But the part that got me is where one of the protagonists in the movie is climbing a chain link fence and they electrify it and he's on this fence. They had at that time in the 80s just come up with a really good electrical effect that allowed them to They used it in Raiders of the Lost Ark and all kinds of different things. So the effect was good and it was worth using to make a movie, but the idea that you can be electrified where you're climbing on it. I just got into this the other day. Somebody was talking about, well, we bought a game for Christmas where you grab onto these handles and when you zoop it up and then you put a little transformer on it, you can get the voltage up to high enough that it's almost hard to hold on to, especially if you're licking it with your tongue. And so the argument was about house current and its comparison to 120 and its comparison to 240 and, you know, it was an AC. We're gonna, I mean, it's a DC voltage and we're gonna hook up, hot rod it up and all this kind of stuff so that even us guys can't hang on to this thing because it's just a game with 4 handles and the buzzer goes boop and you're supposed to hit a button and the last guy that hit the button loses and he's supposed to hang on and get shocked. Okay, wicked cool game, fun party game, great around the kitchen table. You know, the 4 and 6-year-old kids come in and jump up in the air and but we start talking about electricity and a bunch of people started arguing about electricity and when you're going to get shocked and how you're going to get shocked, and the phrase came up, well, he was, you know, it is naked skin touching, and I'm going, people, you've got to move beyond this. You've got to, how do you think birds have something on their feet that allows them to sit on a power line because it's not naked skin touching the power line? Observe the world around you. And when you see a bird sitting on a power line and not dying, you just got to ask yourself, why? Why? And that's what applies. That's why every now and again I go on a rant about this. We're dealing with what's commonly called explosives, even though gunpowder is nothing more than an anhydrous form of gasoline. That's absolutely not true. I just wanted to use the term anhydrous again because it felt so good the first time. Dry gasoline, it's no different than blocks of wood or pieces of paper. It deflagrates or burns at a slightly higher rate because it has an oxidizer in it that goes back to these controlled substances. So we're pyros around here. Not only do we make lots of noise with guns, but we blow stuff up. One of my let's not get into it. I mean, when we say blow up, it's we big, like pounds of HA. But not being able to get this kind of stuff is frustrating because we've never hurt anybody. We've never, you know, the gun owners of the world are not the problem. There's 37 million guns on the ground, 37 million gun owners, and 200-300 million guns on the ground. And trust me, if we were violent, you'd know it. We're not. Those of us who do pyrotechnics and blow things up and have ranges in our backyard are not the problem. The problem is stupid think. 93, we're building a house. Never forget this because it was like getting words. When I have a question about something, like this morning I watched some dude who's couldn't machine his way out of a paper bag go do an interview at Bat Machine, and Bruce walks around and shows machining techniques, and it's utterly fascinating to see Bruce in his home environment because he's doing this stuff hands-on. He understands what he's doing. So anything, I don't care if it's a knitting class. I don't want somebody that follows a pattern out of a book and just goes click, click, click. I want somebody who understands the concept. So here it is, 93, I'm building a house. And I go down around the back of the house, and there's a guy installing the heat pump. And he's got the reformed hippie hair. He's sending this whole message of I've always been interested in the world around me. I've always been looking, but now I'm actually seeing things. So it wasn't even a mullet like business in the front, party in the back type attitude. And he portrayed it really well. So I thought, okay, here's a smart guy. I'm gonna go ask him. I'm the owner, so I think he'll be honest with me. I said, hey, so this heat pump you're putting in, what do you think? Is this gonna save me money? Because that's how they're sold. They're sold to the general populace as a heat pump to heat your home, saves you money. Out here, I'm on the West Coast now. They've banned gas, they've banned that. complete idiot down in California, Gavin Newsom, to just banned banned gas lawnmowers. Somehow he thinks electric is cleaner. Retards think, and we're letting it happen. That's why this rant was building. We're letting this stuff happen, people. So I walk up to this guy, and I bought the heat pump. I was putting the heat pump in my house so that I could get AC in the summertime. It had nothing to do with saving money. But I had to ask, I said, yeah, maybe this guy is what he looks like, which is a thinker. So I said, dude, what do you think? Is this thing going to save me money? I said, well, elaborate on your a little bit. What does that mean? Is this going to save me money? This, because, dude, you're talking to somebody that I've been a radical all my life. I worked down at Miramar. I put in the mirrors for Howard Hughes. I built solar collectors. I was absolutely committed to saving this planet that we're destroying willy-nilly, hand over fist. And I said, well, you must have met a good woman, huh? And he said, well, absolutely, that's exactly what happened. He said, I met someone that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. I had children, and now I'm a man. I'm growing to be a man. I cut my hair, and I go, yeah, it's obvious. You still, you're still exuding, you're kind of in the middle right now. Are you ever going to come over to our side? And he said, well, I'm really trying to. So I said, back to our original question. You told me about Miramar to show me that you're qualified to have an opinion on whether or not this heat pump is going to save me money. So what is he said it's a luxury item. Purely and simply, it's a luxury item. And more power to you for being able to have it. He said, when I can afford it, when I build a house, it will have a heat pump in it, but it's going to be for the AC. I'm not going to fool myself into thinking that it's saving money. And I look around the world right now. It's just turned 2022. I'm recording this late in January 2022. I will never say that the world around us is caving in. Again, I've grown up with, I think it was about the revolt songs, the rebellion songs, the political songs of the 60s and the 70s and up into the 80s. One of the commonly used lines was, in times like these, in days like these, in these trying times. Will Smith used it in the 90s in his stuff, in these trying times. I grew up in a fundamentalist church background, so in times like these, written in the 1700s. People have always thought we're living in the worst of times, that everything around us is falling apart. So it's always been the war between people who can think and the 99.9% of sheeple out there that refuse to think, refuse to look objectively at the world around them and draw conclusions. But this gun thing is near and dear to me, and every now and again I feel compelled to make a rant like this to say, hey, we have got to protect this. We have got to protect ourselves from what I call the retards. When I teach Hunter Ed here, haven't taught for 2.5 years because the COVID, we're in the middle of a pandemic that's getting ready to turn endemic, and we're going to be wearing masks for the rest of our lives, and we're never going to be able to teach, and we're never going to be able to be with our kids, and we're never going to be able to be with our grandparents or our parents. We've got to separate the age groups. When you're in this retard speak, absolutely stupid people making decisions, but worse than that, stupider people following them along. Feed me. It's terrifying. I'm not going to say that these times are worse, but I will say that thank you, the internet. Thank you to social media. Word does get around quicker now. And the chasm is widening. People are actually getting to see each other in real time to what they really believe. And it gives people like me a platform. In some senses, never have so many spent so much time documenting so little, taking pictures of duck faces and taking pictures. That's all. We don't even want to. In these rants, I'm fighting against that, even though I'm using this medium. I want to use this medium for sending out information, but every now and again I have to say, hey, the lifestyle that allows me to have I open that door and it's rocking out there. It doesn't pick up on the camera very much, but I'm standing here hearing everything from handguns to, I think somebody's got a big AR VMG out there. I'm hearing a couple of real booms. Somebody's clearing the bench with the muzzle brake this wide. All good. Totally good. Unfortunately, there's another guy right over here working on his truck wearing earplugs. He might have to take his truck around to bring it inside. But he's a shooter. So there's no, we are shooters around here. It wasn't that long ago. A good friend of my wife's came down. She drove for 2 hours to come down here and see a concert or a school play or something. They went out and did some ladies thing, and she came wandering bleary-eyed into the living room. She goes to bed early, this lady. We don't. And so she comes into the living room. She had got up to get a drink of water or something. She's like, I opened my window and it really sounds like is that shooting? And I said, yeah, you've heard of the far off sound of freedom? Welcome to our house. 24/7, 365, dude. And I'm here to preserve that. I'm here to say we the collective, we the people who care, we the people that know the difference, we the people that took guns to school and there were never any school shootings. I got an A+. The only A+ I ever got on a demonstration speech was for firing a muzzleloader out the window of the classroom. And nobody ever got hurt. I got an A++ plus extra credit, and I found out how cool it is to pass on information about something that I actually understand. But we have to fight. The fact that I can't get nitric acid is just a small facet of this problem. I want to be able to drive down and get some nitric acid so I can rust blue some guns. I need muriatic is still the only reason nitric acid is controlled is because of an overreaction to a complete whack job who blew something up. Unfortunately, there's whack jobs. You know, Anders Breivik is getting out of jail. He went out and killed 77 people. Over 50 of them were harmless children on an island at a peace conference. The guy spent 2 years amassing weapons in Europe where you can't get weapons, and then went out, and now, because they don't have death penalties and they don't want to hurt people, he's been in jail for 10 years, and he's probably going to be back out on the street here shortly. They just let a mass murderer. That's not. Sorry to get off on a political. This is not meant to be a political rant. It's meant to be think with me, people. Every year I have to bring that out again and say, please look at the world.